Welcome to Talk Purpose and Truth with Eden and Kim, shifting you into higher consciousness, the show that elevates, uplifts, and encourages listeners to grow, heal, awaken, and evolve. Eden and Kim include bold topics, special interviews with inspiring guests, intuitive readings, channeled messages from beyond, including celebrities, hot topics to expand your awareness, and time for questions from the audience. Tune in for unprecedented truth, authenticity, on-purpose discussions, and magical moments.
So the audience knows exactly who we are hearing from today. So we have JR Martinez, and he's an Army vet, a burn survivor, an actor, motivational speaker, New York Times best-selling author, and Dancing with the Stars season 13 winner.
Woo!
Woohoo! JR has traveled the world speaking with troops and various bases, as well as serving as keynote speaker for numerous major corporate events, nonprofits, universities, and Fortune 500 companies. JR devotes himself to spreading his message of resilience and optimism. And he is married and has an 8-year-old daughter. And I think, is her name Lauren?
Her name is Lauren, yes.
Yes, I remember that. Okay. Yes. So, hi, JR. Welcome.
Hello, ladies. Hello. It's a pleasure to be here with the both of you and to have this opportunity to just talk life.
Yeah, that's what. Yes,
I was really hoping that at some point somebody would mute you though for reading that entire bio. God bless you for trying to attack that thing.
It's so interesting and so much you've already done at such a young age. And thanks for being here, especially with the 8-year-old daughter, because I have one too. And you know, with I don't know if you're doing online school, but with online school, I've been needed much more than I used to be.
Yes. So we were doing online school. We decided, let's wait. Let's kind of see. Hopefully everything is okay, right? And then, but let's just give ourselves a little bit of time. And so that's what we decided to do. And it is driving, because God bless my wife. My wife is the one that has really been involved. I occasionally get pulled in when math is the topic. Then I get pulled in.
Oh,
and
I would be.
Yes,
that would be terrible.
Yeah, I give math to my husband too.
See, yeah, that's just my thing. I don't know why, and it's just my thing. My wife was a straight A student in high school, college, but she worked her ass off for that A, and it came to math. So to make it a little bit easier, they give it to me, and so it's been a challenge. It definitely has been, but we decided, okay, things seem pretty good and safe and healthy where we are, so we made a decision we're gonna put her back in after the holiday weekend. So yeah, it's exciting, but it's busy.
Oh.
It's busy.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, and also right now with the world the way it is, it might change in 3 days. It might get better, it might get worse. We don't know. So it's kind of like one of those things. You're just like, okay, day by day.
What an incredible year, though, right? And I say that, I know, and I don't want to be tone deaf to the people that have suffered and have lost and that are still suffering, but I think for humanity, for our country, I think this is an opportunity where I think so many of us are so busy being busy and stimulated and distracted that we don't really focus on things that are happening in our communities, things that are happening in our homes, things that are happening in ourselves, within our hearts and our minds. And this year has forced every single one of us to understand this whole other definition and meaning to the word adapt and being fluid. And you think of like social media is filled with filters, right? Like we can take a photo and be like, we don't like this and that, and you can literally go to 1 or 2 apps and clean that bad boy up and make it look polished and beautiful to the point where all of a sudden you're getting hundreds of likes and maybe thousands depending on your following. I feel like that's what 2020 is about. 2020 is like, okay, we're taking this picture that we don't clearly like and we're filtering it and we're going to try to clean this thing up. But the only way we get that beautiful picture is if we're willing to actually look at the stuff that isn't that pretty.
Right.
Looking at the truth.
Yeah.
And it's so
that's what this is all about.
And it's so funny because like even from I've gone back and forth. I mean, I tend to be pretty an open book and pretty vulnerable. I believe that is the way to really impact and connect with people when you're open and honest, and I try to be that. But I remember a few months ago I came across a photo of when I was injured. And it was probably 3 months after I was injured, not even. And I said to my wife, I was like, look, like, because I met my wife after, and I was like, look, this is what I looked like at one point. And she was like, oh my God, it's crazy to believe that that's you. And I said, I'm gonna post that, right, so people can understand the journey of how far I've come. And she was like, yeah, I don't know if you should really post. I'm like, why? And she was like, well, because it might be too much for some people. And I was like, yeah, but isn't that what we need more of? We need people to be real and raw and say, listen, here's the mess. Here's the mess.
Yeah.
And it's okay, because we're all messy. We all are messy in different ways, right? Like, my wife is messy and leaving stuff around the house, right? I'm messy in the sense of when it comes to relationships. I have not necessarily been the best, and I've had to work on that and really look at myself to understand, okay, how am I going to clean this mess up? And in order for me to be able to understand what I need to address and work on, well, first I got to be able to identify what the problem is.
Yeah, so you have to look at it.
Right. Right. And I think a lot of people we talk to are very conscious in looking at this as a gift and transformation and awakening and how do you pivot and change and shift and adapt and all of that. But there are a lot of people that I see that are taking that energy and putting it into something fear-based or anger-based, and making that their cause, so almost as to not have to deal with their inner truth.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism, right? Like, we all go through that, we all have it, and it's one of those things that I feel like the person that I am today, a lot of people always, I'm not going to say always and sound like arrogant like that, but a lot of people, will say positive things about me and the type of person that I am and what I stand for. And that's great. I appreciate that. But I always tell people, it's like, I believe that the person that I am today is made up of the relationships that I've had, the conversations that I've had, the people that I've met, the places that I've gone. I believe that I am a reflection of all of those experiences. And I can tell you that in every single one of those circles and environments that I found myself in, I was always giving constructive criticism, whether I liked it or not. And you know what I would do? Before, I would be like, oh, forget them, right? That's their problem. They're the ones. And then eventually, as I started to get more mature and started to understand the importance of, hey, don't take it so personally. And it's okay for you to actually not be this perfect person and figure it out. And I learned a lot of that, not only through my friendship with my best friend, but also through therapy. And I was able to get to a place of being able to take that information and then say, okay, there's something I'm making somebody feel a certain way, whether it clearly really whether it is all on me or not. That person feels this towards me, and I contributed to some degree. Not all of it, because like every interaction that we have with people, we can't be responsible for everybody's mess, right? But but at some point you do have to be able to pay attention and say, well, I am still in this space and I still am in this relationship, so there's something that I have to pay attention to and look at. And I believe that once I learned how to do that, that's when my relationship with my wife took off, and it is what it is today, this healthy relationship that we can communicate with one another, and we couldn't do that before. Like, we couldn't, I kind of bit my tongue, and I had to learn too how to communicate. We've all heard about that book, The 5 Love Languages, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful book, incredible book. And I encourage people to read that book, and not so much directly only for your spouse or your partner, but also for like your children, for people that you work with, people in your family, friends. It's important to be able to understand, okay, let me understand what Kim values over Eden. Like, I can't come to Kim the same way that I'm going to come to you, right? Like, I gotta figure this out and then adapt to, when I'm in Kim's space, this is what Kim values. When I'm with Eden, this is what she values, right? And so many of us just don't do that work, and it's unfortunate because you're missing out on the true potential of every single relationship that you can have, and the first one that matters the most is with yourself. You're missing out on this incredible experience that you can be having with life and feelings because you're avoiding it, because you're allowing every other thing that you've created in your head to get in the way.
Right. And I think people are so, like, what I've come to find over these minimal years, just kidding.
You're so young, yes.
That hat looks good on you, though.
Oh, thank you. But no, what I've come to find is people are so scared about an argument, or, you know, they do something where they slip up.
Experience. And I say that because now I can say that it was a blessing, because it taught me so much and gave me a completely different perspective. The downside of that, and I know we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but like, for example, when I joined All My Children, I was a guy that just came off of the streets, and it was just a casting call, and it was a 3-month opportunity. I was like, okay, groovy. Like, I'm just going to own this for 3 months, and I'm going to ride off into the sunset and say that I once did it, right? That's cool. But I got there, and I can tell you that early on, it was hard for me to adapt, because every Monday when I would show up to set, everybody congregated in like the hair and makeup room. That's where everybody, you know, would hang out. Of course, I had no reason to be in the hair and makeup room because there was no hair and there was no makeup that was required. So I was very low maintenance. However, that's where everybody was, and that's where the snacks were. So that's where I found myself. And I would go in there and I would listen to what the cast, the actors were talking about as far as like what, you know, what their weekend entailed and what was important to them. And I would just sit there and judge them. I would sit there and be like, are you kidding? Like, in my mind, I'm like, are you kidding me? That's what you're talking about?
So surface.
There's people that, and coming from somebody who's a veteran, right? There's people out there that are fighting for our freedom. There's families out there that are suffering. There's troops that, like, I'm taking it to this whole other place, right? And the problem with that is that now I'm projecting what my experience has been with the world onto everybody else, and I'm blaming them for not seeing the way I see the world. And it's like, well, that's not their fault. That's not their fault at all. Like, everybody's entitled to pursue whatever route they want to pursue in their life. Like, why am I putting? And so what I had to learn, especially with my relationship with my wife, is that I'm a very matter-of-fact kind of guy, right? Like, I sort of kind of tell it like it is. There's not a lot of beating around the bush with me. And especially when it comes to people closest to me, I'm very, like, you can come to me and you can say, like, let's say, Kim, you call me and you're like, hey, listen, JR, like, I'm, you know, just kind of going through something. I'm like, all right, cool, let's talk about it, right? And then I'll say, hey, this is kind of what I feel like you maybe should think about. You call me again, hey, JR, you know, okay, all right, let's talk about it. Okay, cool. But then guess what? You call me like 4 or 5 times later. You know, I'm kind of, and I'm like, okay, Kim, at some point, when are you going to pull the weight? At some point, you have to be willing to meet somebody halfway too, right?
Yes.
You can't expect me or everybody else to save you. You have to be willing to save yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's great. However, my tone and my delivery can come across a little aggressive. And some people can say that's the military guy in you. Some people can say, well, that's because of your experiences in life. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's all of that. But I think also, too, that I also have to be able to identify when I'm speaking to Dan, my best friend, who also was in the military, I can tell him, hey, man, get it together. Come on. Let's stop doing this. Can we, please? Because you're at fault here, right? Do you acknowledge that? But I can't take that same tone and that same energy to my wife, because my wife's going to shut down. So as important as it is to be able to get everything out, there also is a danger in the way that you're delivering that information. If you're delivering it in a reckless way and you're feeling it in this moment, guess what? You may end up regretting and saying something that you can never maybe recover from. So it is important to be able to get it out, but let's get it out in a respectful, controlled way, right? Like, let's find ways to be able to kind of dish that information out. And so now when I go to my wife and I have to tell her, like, hey, this bothered me when you said something, I take a beat. I take like 5 steps back before I can even take 50 steps forward, because that's how you know, if every single one of us right now just paused and just thought of our lives as a book, like if you said to yourself, okay, let me stop for a second. Let's say, okay, my life, everything that I've been through, everything I've experienced, it's a book, okay? Think about how the first few chapters of that book have already been written. Things you've inherited, this society, the world that you've inherited, family, friends, what we've done, our history, that's already been written. So you're just kind of coming into it and learning about it and trying to figure out where you fit in. But at a certain point, and this is where I think a lot of people unfortunately miss the value of what they can bring to the table, is that at a certain point, you learn the ability to pick up a pencil, you learn the ability to be able to type on a computer, on a device, and you can actually write the middle, which is the bulk and the meat part of your story, the meat part of that book, and write the ending. That literally, you have that power. And so for me to be able to tell people my story and to be able to say, listen, yeah, when I wrote the book a few years ago, this is my ending right now. But guess what? There's another beginning right after this, and because I'm still writing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. You know what I love? I love that he just brought that up, because
amazing.
we had, like a few weeks ago, we had on an illusionist magician that I know for years, Alex Ramon. And his analogy, so funny, because his analogy at the end about what's going on right now in the world, he said, I'm looking at it as unlimited possibilities and gifts, and it's just a chapter of your book, and it doesn't mean that the book ends now. So just look at it, make the chapter as good as you can right now until it moves on to the next, And so it's so funny that you brought up the same type of analogy. You got to listen to his episode.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And here's another one. So you have this in I think it's your website that you sent, and I think this is something that you use when you speak, and we thought this was so profound. It says that universal change isn't bad if you're willing to adapt. Your path in life is decided by your own ability to adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
So I think that can be kind of in addition to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that is just profound. I think everybody needs to hear that.
Change is inevitable. We all know that. That's a given. We're well aware.
Yeah.
Of that. But for people to be able to understand and identify that, yes, change isn't bad if you're willing to adapt. But the major question comes down to the fact that, are you willing? Are you willing at some... Think about it. In my life, and let's just kind of focus on what a lot of people have a tendency to kind of focus on, right? Which is my injury in Iraq, which I understand why. I get it. It was the major event that took place in my life. And you think about me being 19 years old and suddenly having to look at my body and look at where I was going in life and have to accept that. I mean, that was a huge change. And there are people that are reminded right now or are going through their huge changes. And I can tell you that for me, the only reason I've become the person that I am today is simply because I was willing to accept that I needed to grieve the loss of who I was, because I did have to grieve. I grieved the person that I knew for 19 years of my life. And I started to have to, kind of make this new introduction and a new relationship with this new person that I'm told that I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And that was difficult. And so for me, it was a matter of, I needed to let go of whatever values, ideologies, not the ideologies and values and beliefs, right? That also kind of stays the same to a degree, but more of what my goals are. Whatever plans and goals that I had prior to this injury, now, unfortunately, are not going to be unattainable because I wanted to remain in the United States military. I wanted to continue to serve. That's no longer a possibility. So I had to let go of that. And then I had to pay attention to this new door that was, just wide open. And it was like, go visit and help somebody else. And I got into my own head thinking there's nothing I can possibly do or offer anybody else going through their own adversity. And then eventually, I had to pay attention to the signs of people that were saying, go, you bring value. And I finally went and did it. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, there's this cool thing that I've experienced, and it entails helping other people, yet in turn I'm helping myself. Two-way street, win-win. I want to do this. It's addictive. And so I think all of us have the capability of adapting. It's just a matter, are you willing to let go of whatever goals or plans or things that you created in your head that you wanted to do? At a certain point, you do have to let go of certain things. It's no different than, and you guys, I'm sure, have you traveled and been around the world and gone places. And what do you normally do when you go somewhere brand new? You try to leave a little bit of room in that luggage. Why? Because you're going to bring some stuff back. But also, too, you can't pack everything in the luggage, because when you get to the airport, they're going to be like, hey, we're going to charge you $5,000 and, for you to be able to take this bag, or where are you going? And because you don't have room to even, your bags are weigh so much that by the time you get on the plane, you are weighing the aircraft down where it can't pick up speed, take off, and then get to that destination. And then you don't have enough room left in your luggage to be able to bring some stuff back with you. That's what life is about. It's understanding when you're packing to go somewhere, because we're all going somewhere every single day. I don't need to take this. I don't need to take that. That serves no value to me at this juncture where I am in my life. I'm going to dump it, and then I'm going to leave some room to hopefully pick something else up along the way. And if you're willing to do that, man, I'm telling you, this is coming from somebody, not only through his own personal life, that he's overcome, almost losing his life and a visible injury, that visible scars. And I have to overcome this every day. Every day I am reminded of the scars on my face and on my body. Every single freaking day.
Right.
Not by me, by everybody that I interact with in the world. Every space that I'm in, they're looking at me, they're doing a double take. But here's the catch.
Yeah.
For a very long time, I would always, prior to my injury, Hispanic kid, growing up, born and raised in the South, the narrative was always in my mind, oh, somebody's looking at me because they think I'm going to do something. Because that's what the environment made me feel. Which kind of bleeds into a lot of what's going on today in today's world, right? But then I become injured, and now I have this visible wound, this visible scar. And now I start navigating through the world, and guess what? People are still looking at me. Well, now I'm associating, now you're looking at me because of, my scars. I forgot now it was about maybe something else. Maybe they have this other belief. Now it's about my scars. But then here I got my foot in my mouth. After I got into the entertainment space, and after I was on Dancing with the Stars, one day I was traveling. I landed. My best friend picked me up. I wasn't feeling well, so I said, hey, man, can we stop at a drugstore? I'm going to pick up some meds. He said, absolutely. I picked up some meds. I'm standing in the aisle reading the back of one of the medicine that I was thinking about getting, and I can see this man looking at me at the other end of the aisle. He's just staring at me. And I'll be completely transparent. He was a white man. And in my mind, I immediately went to this place of, why is he staring at me like this? Why is he looking at me like this? Then I quickly went into this place, kind of the narrative that I created in my head from when I was a child, because of experiences or stories that I heard. This is why he's staring at me. Then it was, and now he's staring at me because of my scars. So then I'm like, just walk away, JR. I go stand in line because I'm going to pay. Guess who's standing right behind me? That man. And what do I do is I'm standing in that line. I just kind of turn around, look around. I didn't even realize it. I turned around and looked, and he's staring at me again. And I just felt like, this is kind of my personality. I just felt like I'm gonna confront this because he's made me feel uncomfortable. So I'm gonna make him feel uncomfortable, right? And so I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?" And literally, the story that I had been creating in my head for the last 10 minutes just went off. And I said, I'd be doing a lot better if people stopped staring at me. That's what.
Oh, that's what I would do. That's how I do it.
Was in my mouth. So then after I said that, he catches himself and he's like, and he kind of stutters a little bit. He's trying to find the words and he says, I'm sorry. He's like, you just look like that guy that was on Dancing with the Stars. And I admire him so much because this, this and he's going on. And who felt like the biggest jerk in the world? All because I started to create the narrative in my head. I was the one that allowed past experiences or other people's experiences to help me create whatever the narrative was. It was me. It wasn't him. I did this, not him. And until if we can identify that we are the ones that are creating this, we are constantly every single day thinking. Our minds are not stopped. They don't stop. It doesn't stop working. And we are the ones that are constantly creating this narrative in our mind. And if we can find ourselves to say, hold on, pull the story back a little bit. Wait. I'm writing the full script for a full episode. I don't even know right now. Let me go and find out at the root first if I'm on the right track. And if I am, then I'll continue writing. If not, well, I might have to think about turning the page and starting fresh.
Right. With what
You said you told a story about your friend telling you you need to cry. You can possibly talk about that. But the other thing is that you talked about, oh my gosh, where'd it go? Oh, that there's power in being vulnerable.
Yes.
There's so much power in that. And I think men especially
Yes.
need to hear that.
Absolutely. I mean, what I have learned, okay, let's dive into that a little bit, right? Because both of them sort of tie into one another. You think about it, like I am a male. And so I got that going for me, which is a good thing and also could be a bad thing. I also am Hispanic, which is a good thing, but also could be a bad thing. I also was in the military, which is a great thing, but it also could be a bad thing. And the bad thing about it all, exactly, is this element of being a man, of feeling like I have to have it all figured out, and I have to put on this face and this image and this persona for forget everybody else. You're doing it for yourself because there's something you're afraid to address, and so you feel like you have to overcompensate. And all of us do it. All of us find ourselves, there's an insecurity that we have about something in our lives, and so what do? We overcompensate in other areas. We do it. You may think you don't do it, you do it. And the only reason why you haven't identified that you do it is because it hasn't been pointed out to you. Someone hasn't had enough courage yet to say, hey, why are you doing this so much? Or what's going on here? And so for me, when you think about the Hispanic culture, we don't cry. We don't feel. We don't do that, right? We just keep going. That's what, especially in my family, that's what you do. You just keep going. You stay busy.
Right.
When it comes to we don't have time to cry. We don't have time to talk, because if you start crying or if you start talking, guess what? I'm gonna die, and then you're gonna die. Because what I was supposed to do, I didn't do because I was too busy crying or feeling. And now that's caused you or me to lose our lives or to get injured or something to happen to us, right? And society does the same damn thing. It's constantly like putting us like, if you show this weakness, well, then we might have to reassess and reevaluate. What I would challenge everybody to think about, and what I had to realize, is that, okay, if I'm in spaces that don't allow me, not necessarily to show up every single day and cry, because nobody...
For more information on Eden, go to edensustin.com. For more information on Kim, go to kimlifecoach.com. Make sure to follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Talk Purpose and Truth Podcast. If you loved this episode, you'll love every episode. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you for listening.